Thank you.
And if you are going to want to testify, to please put your name in the chat, your name and address, and what you want to testify about.
All right, thank you. And with that, then we'll begin. Call the meeting of the Beaverton Traffic Commission to order. Today is October 7th, 2021. We're starting at 7:04. Thank you everyone for your patience while we deal with technical items all around. We'll begin with roll call. Commissioner Bobadilla. Is that good, or do we need an audible, Jabra?
I think we need to take care of the audible.
Yeah, we cannot hear you. Can you hear us? Okay.
It says she's
Can you hear me?
unmuted. Oh, now
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, it's like doesn't say mute. I lost video earlier too. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Present.
Vice Chair McClean.
Present.
Excellent. Commissioner Urbanski.
Present.
And Commissioner Cohen is the vice chair. And then, whoops, here's my list. Sorry. And then Commissioner Moore.
Here.
Thank you. All right. We have two openings at present, but we do have a quorum to conduct business this evening. So welcome and thank you, everyone. With that, then, the next part is visitor comment for anyone who would like to make a comment on something that is not on the agenda this evening. Stephanie, do we have anyone?
No, I don't think so. The two are for TC 825.
Okay, excellent. And
3. We have 3, 4.
okay, and we'll follow that when we come to it then. So thank you. We'll call you when the appropriate time comes. So thank you. Next up would be staff comments. Mr. Khasho.
Mr. Chair, just I want to mention that I did email you 7 additional written testimony for TC 825.
Excellent. Thank you. And was that the only thing?
This is the only thing I have here at this time.
Very good then. Next up is the meeting minutes of the, oh, sorry, next up is the consent agenda. There are 2 items on there as we did not have a quorum for the last time that for our last meeting. We were not able to pass the meeting minutes. There was motions made with no second, so the motion's held. So for consent agenda, it is the meeting minutes the last 2 times that we met, July 1st, 2021, and again in September 2nd, 2021. Those that, so we can still have a vote on those though. I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda for the 2 meeting minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner, Vice Chair McClean, thank you. All right, with that in mind, then we will now take a vote. Commissioner Bobadilla.
I wasn't present for if we're doing for both of those meetings. I wasn't present for us 9-2.
Correct. I believe, Mr. Khasho, they are able to vote though, because we did not have, since we didn't have a quorum, we would not be able to pass the meeting minutes for that one. But you said, I believe last time we could.
We need a vote, but the people who wasn't at the meeting for the minutes for that meeting, they can abstain on that one.
Okay.
You could only vote on the meetings that you were in.
Okay. But in that case, then do we need to break them apart? Because again, if we did, since we didn't have a quorum, how does that motion pass? Because we don't have a quorum to pass those.
I think, yeah, Chair Conway, we only need a quorum to vote. I mean, it could be passed 1-0, but if you want, we can break up the minutes separately.
Nope, that's, I think as long as you make a note of which meeting you did or did not attend. Commissioner Bobadilla just did. She's like, I'm not able to do it on this September 2nd meeting. All right, very good. Vice Chair McClean then?
Aye, I'll vote yes.
All right, Commissioner Moore?
I was unable to vote on the September 2nd also. I approved the prior one. I was not present for the September 2nd.
Perfect, thank you. Commissioner Urbanski?
Aye for both of them.
Thank you. And Chair Conway, aye for both of them. So with that then, motion passes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, and 5, and 3, 0 with 2 abstains. Okay, very good. Thank you on that. Next up is the public hearings. We have 3 of those to address today. So we begin the public hearings, TC 824, and then continue our traffic calming discussion, and then finally continue with TC 825. That in mind, we will read the chair's opening statements. These will apply to all 3 of our public hearings and be applicable for that. So we will state this statement once and then apply it to all of them. So the Traffic Commission will now hold a hearing on TC numbers 824, traffic parking revisions on Southwest Redstone Drive, west of 185th Terrace, revisions to the neighborhood traffic calming program procedures, the continuation from September 2nd, and TC 825, parking restrictions Southwest 160th Avenue between West Baseline and J Street. The hearing will begin with a report from the city traffic engineer, followed by testimony from a person who submitted the proposal. City traffic engineer's report will list the applicable substantive criteria and the reasons behind the recommendation. We will then hear testimony from other interested parties. If you wish to testify on the phone or through video, please state your name and address when permission is given to speak. Your evidence and testimony must be directed to the criteria in section 6.02.060, determined to be applicable by the city traffic engineer or other criteria, current city metro, TriMet, state, or federal policies which you believe apply to the decision. After the hearing is closed, the commission will deliberate on the evidence received and make an oral decision to approve with conditions, or deny the proposal. The decision will not be final until the final written order is signed by the chairperson. All persons who do testify will receive a written notice of the final decision of the commission. Commissions of decision or recommendations to the city council become effective after approval by council. Typically, traffic commission recommendations appear on the consent agenda of the council and are approved by the council without discussion. City council ordinarily does not hold a public hearing on such recommendations. Any decision of the commission, though, may be appealed to city council. When an appeal is properly filed, a separate hearing will be scheduled before council. Any appeal must be filed within with the city recorder within 10 days of the date of the traffic engineer's final written order. The procedures related to written appeals are available to the office from the office of the city traffic engineer and the city recorder. So thank you. With that in mind, then we will begin, and we'll start with staff reports. Mr. Khasho, this is regards to, again, TC 824 continuation park restrictions Redstone Drive.
This one, the hearing portion is still open. So what we need to do, if there is any person who want to testify, they can testify on those. If not, we close the hearing and the commission will deliberate without doing any presentations, or unless you have questions for me.
Excellent.
There's no testimony for this.
All right, excellent then. With that in mind, then we would close the final hearing and go into commission deliberations. Are there any questions of staff, or were there any follow-ups for those that did not attend last time? Any follow-up information needed? Seeing none, then we would entertain a motion to approve with changes or deny the mission, or the motion. Vice Chair McClean.
Oh, I'll start. I think from last meeting, this is really just swapping the no parking from the north side or the south side, if I have that correct, to allow more cars to park. So it's still limited on one side, but based on, last meeting and no other conversation today, I'm in favor of it. So I'll make a motion to approve TC 824 as written.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I think we spoke, at least I did, and felt kind of made point consideration. I do know that it's gone back and forth a couple of times on each side. So with that in mind, I would second the motion as written. Is there any final discussion? Excellent. Seeing none, then we'll do a roll call. Commissioner Bobadilla. We do not hear you. Is the mute? And no mute button. Okay. Is it, do we, yeah, is there, do we need that verbal on these, Mr. Khasho?
Since it's recorded, I think, yeah, we do. It's
Okay.
all-
Okay,
Maybe
we'll come back. I got you. We'll come back. And then Vice Chair McClean.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Moore,
Aye.
Commissioner Urbanski,
Aye.
Chair Conway is aye. And I think she was going to exit, come back in.
Yeah, I think she's going to try to rejoin.
Yeah, perfect. We'll wait just a moment then. No problem at all with that.
Aye.
There we go.
We can hear you.
All right, thank you. All right. Motion passes 5-0. So thank you, everyone. All right, next up is the revisions of the neighborhood traffic calming program procedures. This is also continuation. Mr. Khasho, I'll let you pick up what we had discussed last time.
Yeah, the only changes that we did to the program is to reduce the percentage required of approval of the plan. Currently, the percentage is 67% approval rate, so we will be dropping it to 51%. And this will enhance the chance of neighborhoods getting traffic calming on their streets. And for those reasons, I'm asking the commission to approve this change for the traffic calming program, as it is a priority for the city council.
All right, and was there any follow-up discussion on here now? This was a discussion by the commission, but we were allowing public testimony. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and did we have any this evening, Stephanie, or the other ones for 160? Yes.
Everybody's for TC 825.
Okay, perfect. So with that in mind, then we'll close that portion and have some final discussions. I know that basically we had a little bit of discussion, Commissioner Bobadilla and Commissioner Moore, about what was happening. So are there any other follow-ups, thoughts, comments? The idea was that we were going to focus just on this one section and changing the count.
I'll start. I'll say something. We've had this, I think, discussion going on years about that threshold or that criteria, and that's one component of the entire traffic calming project. So there's a lot of pieces that are still already in place to get the on the traffic calming, to get on the ranking, to have a plan agreed upon, and then go before the final vote with those little yellow cards, and then submitted to the traffic commission for approval. Personally, I don't think it's necessary to lower the threshold, but I don't think it's a problem to do so. If it makes it simpler, if it makes it a better opportunity for those projects to get approved, it still will always go to the Traffic Commission for final approval before any construction is done. So that's an opportunity if somebody is very anti or very upset with any plan, there is still an opportunity if we lower that threshold for them to speak before the plan gets final approval. So I'd be okay, updating the calming project to that lower threshold, and kind of, like anything, continue to monitor and maybe reevaluate this in the years to come to see if that helps.
Great. I think that does sum it up. I think that was one question we had last time was how to prevent, or was there concern about the percentage of people actually passing? So that was well said on that. Any other comments or discussion on that part? Okay, excellent then. Seeing none, Mr. Khasho, this one was a change of recommendation or the motion. It's a request to update the traffic calming bylaws. So now we make a motion to have you update those, I believe was the process. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the changes were shown in the reports that you get. So basically, the motion is to approve the changes that were shown on the traffic calming program that was included in your packet.
Okay, right. All right, thank you. Then I would make a motion to approve as written the new updates to the traffic calming program as written by city engineer.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any final discussion? Seeing none on that then. Roll call, Commissioner Bobadilla.
Okay.
Excellent. Vice Chair McClean,
Yes.
Commissioner Moore,
Aye.
Commissioner Urbanski,
Aye.
and Chair Conway, aye. So that motion also passes 5-0. So thank you, everyone. Okay, next up is TC 825 parking restrictions on Southwest 160th Avenue between West Baseline Road and J Street. The opening chair statements still apply. And we will follow this process with the beginning with a report by city traffic engineer. So Mr. Khasho.
TC 825 was requested by Mr. Jack Lee. Mr. Lee requested restricting parking on one side of 160th Avenue between West Baseline Road and J Street. The reason he's requesting this parking restriction, he's indicated that due to the increase in residential and business development in the area, there is an increase in demand for on-street parking. And when cars are parked on both sides of the street, it is difficult to allow two-way traffic at the same time to pass. 160th Avenue between West Baseline and J Street is approximately 950 feet. It is classified as a local street with a posted speed of 25 miles per hour. The street is fully developed except for two sections, the north end and the south end. It has approximately 200 feet that it's undeveloped. The pavement width where the street has sidewalks on both sides, it's 32 feet. Currently, parking is restricted on the north end, just on the west side of the street for approximately 75 feet. That's near West Baseline Road. At the north end, there are sidewalks on the east side, that's within that 200 feet. The west side, it has a ditch and like 2 to 3 foot shoulder. On the south end, that first 200 feet from J Street, there is sidewalk on the west side, and there is a huge ditch, and the east side of the street has a flat, wide shoulder. Staff did the field visit on 160th for several times. It was observed that the on-street parking demand is very high, not on just 160th, it's also the other streets surrounding that area. 160th Avenue was constructed and developed under Washington County standards. That's before that area was annexed to the city. So under county standards, to allow parking on both sides, the pavement width is 32 feet. For the city standards, to allow parking on both sides, if the street carries less than 500 vehicles per day, it is 28 feet. But if it's more than 500, the street has to be 34 feet. So 160th fall between the two standards of the city. For that reason, staff is recommending to keep parking in the developed area where the pavement is 32 feet and just restrict parking at the north end where the ditch is. Because what's happening is when people park at that narrow shoulder, they block the traveled way. And that's where it becomes really difficult to have two-way traffic. And on the south end, it's the same thing. So if we just restrict parking on the north end, approximately 200 feet, on the west side, just the complete length, this will allow two-way traffic because the pavement width there is 27 feet. On the south end, it is 23 feet, the pavement width, but we will also restrict parking on the west side of the street where the ditch is. The east side, yeah, it is a gravel shoulder. It's wide. If cars park there, it doesn't impede traffic or affect any two-way traffic in that area. So this is the staff recommendation. We don't recommend restricting parking on one side all the way through. And this is due to the demand. And if you read the testimony received from residents of the apartments and also residents of the townhomes and condos in the area, they are all, I'll say the majority are in favor of keeping the parking the way it is. So we're asking the commission tonight to approve the staff recommendation if possible. And thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. Next up would be the public testimony at this time.
Quick question for staff, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Khasho, do you know approximately how many parking spaces may no longer be available with these new restrictions? Approximately.
Yeah, I mean, 200 feet, on the south side, potentially 8 vehicles. On the north end, there is a 75 feet already of no parking, so it's 125, so maybe 5.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Total is around 13 vehicles.
That was it, thanks.
I want to mention something also. We did a traffic count on the street, and just after the report was published and sent out, we did this just last Tuesday. And we found out that on the south end of 160th Avenue, it carries 386 vehicles per day. On the north end, we did the traffic count between the entrance to the apartment garage and west baseline. And in that area, due to the apartment traffic, it was 879 vehicles per day. But so you could tell that the majority of the street, it only carries around, between 400 and 500 vehicles.
All right, with that then, Stephanie will allow the folks to speak in the order that they were
Yes,
reached out to you. We'll
in the
begin.
order of the chat. So the first person will be Jack Lee.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, please.
Hello, good evening. I've been a longtime resident of the area. I'm a daily user of Southwest 160th, and I have increasingly been concerned about the safety and the congestion that is caused by the parking on both sides of the street. I would say the accelerator has been the development of South Baseline 158 apartment complex, which has access, I think it's the main access from the apartment to the rest of to exit from the area. Just to think about the development, every one of the condos, apartments, townhomes, all have parking. They all have parking. Yet we have a crazy amount of street parking going on. And I've noticed quite a bit of difference. And let me just start with an anecdote. I was stuck for 5 minutes behind a UPS delivery truck, waiting for this driver to come back because there's no room to get around. I saw the report from the engineer, and it's not like everybody's driving a Mini Cooper here. There are trucks. I'm gonna put in the chat. There are commercial vehicles actually parked there constantly, it's large vehicles. And now I'm thinking that if in case one of the vehicles were disabled, and at the same time there was an emergency, so a fire truck or an ambulance go through, they will lose precious minutes because that street cannot be considered a two-way street. And I'm asking the commission to look beyond just the current count. Baseline 158 put in hundreds of apartments. I can tell you there's an approved apartment complex on J Street. That's going to be another few hundred. I know there'll be 2 more apartment complexes going in, which because of the restriction of the county road on Southwest 158, will be mainly using 160th as the main access, ingress and egress to those apartments. So you're talking about another 1,000 units that is going to come in addition to the baseline 158. I saw it's almost a humorous note, but I saw this manager from Southwest 158 says, because of the pandemic, people can't afford the $100 per spot. It's like, question to myself is that why is Southwest 158 charging $100 during the pandemic? It was my question. Every development has parking. So who is parking in all those streets? So with safety concerns, there doesn't seem to be justification of so much street parking, and it has been increasing. And if you're going to look at the future of that area, there will be multiple developments with hundreds of units being developed. And I cannot say this street can stay I don't think it is current. It is classified as a local street, but it really is not a run-of-the-mill local street. It's a major arterial because all the access has been shunted off to 168 because 158 is closed. So 160th is the main arterial now, going north and south. So I'm asking the commission to look just not beyond the current car count, which already dramatically increased, as Jabra said, just the presence of Southwest 158 apartment complex just dramatically increased. So imagine the already approved apartment complex on J Street, and then a few more that's going to come in. This situation will be untenable, and I think there will be a safety incident at some point.
So are you for or against this, sir?
I am for restricting parking, not beyond what the engineer.
Okay. So you're in support of the motion as it is written and presented to the council.
I'm actually asking the whole, not only the undeveloped ditch areas, but one side of Southwest 160th be a no parking zone, so that we legitimately have a two-way road on 160th. I just disagree that this is not a local street anymore. Because of the development with annexation from the city of Beaverton, the restriction by the county on Southwest 158, much more traffic is going to be coming into Southwest 160th.
Cool.
I'm asking the commission to look just not only the immediate, but also the future. This is all part of planning. And so as these developments and developments that have already occurred, they are supposed to have parking for their residents. So who was parking over there?
Okay, so, all right, thank you. I would encourage you also to, as you mentioned, this is a planning issue, to attend the planning commission and speak on behalf
I plan
project
to.
as well. So thank you, appreciate that. Commissioner Urbanski, you had a question?
Yeah, a question. So Jack, if I understand you correctly, basically you wouldn't be happy unless the whole neighborhood has restricted parking, not just 160th, but also the side streets, because the same argument would apply to those, correct?
No, because no, although I do say there's quite a bit more traffic and parking that's been going on 162nd and so on. But this particular road, Southwest 160th, has apartment complexes that are already built or going to be built. And there'll be hundreds of more units, whereas on Southwest 162nd and to the west, it's already developed. They all have townhomes or condos or whatever. So it's already developed, it's fully developed. I wish that people would use the parking that that those units have, but they're not. But that it's a different category than Southwest 160th, where it is now city policy and county policy to shunt traffic onto Southwest 160th.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd just like to add, it's not up to the traffic commission to be doing the city planning. And
I
sympathetic to
understand,
you,
but you guys
it's
work
the city
hand in
that's
hand.
saying you only need to have one parking space per unit in the apartment.
I understand. So that is an
Crazy
issue
idea,
that I
but that's the
intend
way it
to
is.
raise with the planning commission. But I'm asking you as an adjunct, and you know, Jabra is in a lot of these development conferences. When the planning calls for one parking spot, they have wrong assumptions in that because we're near Metro and Max and so on, that people are not going to have cars. The opposite has proven true. And with the advent of these and constructions of these apartment complexes, now we see that they're charging $100 per spot. So naturally, people are going to park on the street. And when it becomes an issue on a major arterial like Southwest 160th, then it becomes a problem. I'm a daily user. I can see it. I can see the UPS trucks, the FedEx trucks, potential of emergency vehicles coming in through. And people are not driving small cars. So I was going to send you a picture of two commercial vehicles that's always parked here. And it's like,
Okay,
why are they here?
We'll raise that up as a follow-up question. Is there anything else though?
That's good.
All right, thank you. Appreciate your time, Mr. Lee. Thank you. Tiffany, who is their next person?
We have Noah Colley.
Thank you. Noah, if you state your name, address, and also if you are for or against the motion as written, and then please make your comments. Thank you.
Did I get him?
Yeah, he's in the, I see him in the window. You are on mute, Noah, or Mr.
Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, my name is Noah. I live on 1110 Southwest 160th in the Leaf Apartments there. And I am against the measure to restrict traffic on Southwest 160th. Am I allowed to respond to previous testimony?
You can make a comment. We are not currently discussing. Is there an echo somewhere in there?
Maybe an echo on my end.
There we go. You are able to make a comment. We would not be able to go back and forth, however, but you
Okay,
can
okay.
make your comments as they are.
Okay. I just wanted to note, I share
Mr. Lee.
I'm forgetting his last name, Mr. Lee. I share Mr. Lee's concerns about safety. I just wanted to note that there are only 2 bottlenecks in the neighborhood, in all the streets. There's Southwest Mortondale Lane, and then a little tiny nub of Southwest 161st that are truly bottlenecked. Almost every other location has multiple access points. There are multiple ways to move from Southwest J onto baseline, as well as from 158th to 163rd, I guess. So there's many ways to navigate the grid. And I doubt that emergency vehicles would have a hard time moving through. But what I did want to say is that for those of us who do live on 160th and live in the neighborhood, the parking is a challenge. I'm curious if there was any measurement done on any of the streets at night of how much parkable street was taken up on both 160th, 162nd, and 163rd. I know that it can be a challenge in the evenings returning home to find parking on 160th, on Gage, on Mason, on 162nd. And 163rd is almost always in the evenings taken up on both sides of the street as well. So I just am curious where we would be expected to park in the event that the parking on one side of the street was closed. Because as far as I can tell, there's nowhere else, especially if there's going to be new development, that's just going to exacerbate the problem of parking. That's my comment.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? And I will say, Sarah, this is a question that has come up before this commission often, and I think as Mr. Lee noted, it does involve some planning. And one of the things that this commission is faced with, as Commissioner Urbanski excellently stated, we are following what the Planning Commission has set up in their guidelines. Those guidelines are approved as part of the planning and development. They're not part of the traffic. So the Traffic Commission often is trying to work out resolutions and solutions post follow-up. So we definitely have seen this before, and it's a consideration we are well aware of. So thank you as well for reiterating that. No other questions, and thank you, Sarah. Appreciate your time. Stephanie, there is one more or two more?
There's a few more.
Okay.
Brendan Mitchell.
All right, and then Brendan, if you would state your name, address, and whether you're for or against to the motion as written, and then please make your comments. Thank you.
Yeah, Brendan Mitchell, 1110 Southwest, 160th. I also am against the new policy as written. Much like Noah said, I am not sure where we will be expected to park. Restricting parking would exacerbate the issue. I know I see people, I've seen a comment that says park in the unit where you reside. Not everybody is a one-car family. A lot of families have 2 cars as standard order of procedure. That's just how we get down. It's a must for our daily lives. Additionally, if we're forced, I'll give an example. My wife and 2-year-old daughter, if they're forced further away to park further away from the unit, I'm going to actually fear for their safety personally. And I know that does not just go for me, but a number of residents I've spoken with on this topic up and down the street. So I think that planning with the apartment buildings that are planning to go up, putting in some type of, requirements for them to have to provide parking or whatever the case might be the way to go. But restricting parking is definitely not going to be the wave. No matter if you're talking about 75 feet, 200 feet, whatever the case is, every inch is going to count. So that's my comments. Thank you.
I will ask you, sir, if I may, a follow-up. As they noted, not all of the development and I know the other commissioners, we've all kind of been through there. I used to run through there all the time pre-COVID. That area has continued to grow. What do you anticipate is going to happen to the new developments as they go in? Let's say that the motion does not pass this evening, but you end up with all these new units. What are they supposed to do?
That's not necessarily a problem that I feel like should be the residents. I feel like that is something that the city needs to be planning with these buildings that are going up in the developers to require them to provide parking or build it into the price plan for, the units they're renting out, or make it, you can't put the burden on the residents of 160th. You got to make sure you're planning with these folks who are building these units, having people come in here, and to restrict parking again would exacerbate the issue.
I understand, but suppose that the house there was tore down and they put in a new, another new complex on 160th, and those people, then they need to park. I think two of the questions that came up were
what's going to happen when you restrict the parking?
Well, I'm asking you what would happen when they add more in. At some point, there's a finite amount of space, I guess. So I was just asking what happens as this continues to grow. Are people, how are you going to work out with people if there's a limited number and no more spaces are open?
Again, I think that is something the city should be planning with the buildings to say, hey, you got to provide parking to your folks on site.
Okay.
That way we're not having this influx of spaces taken up on the street, and we can keep two-sided parking on both sides of the street.
Right.
I also saw a comment that said permits. Hey, that's something we got to get down with. Maybe that's something to be discussed. But to restrict parking would not be the move, in my opinion. So
okay. And one of the concerns that was brought up, just to ask you, because you had brought up safety. What do you say about the issue of current safety with the current situation the way it is? Do not feel it is a safe situation.
I have not seen anything wildly unsafe, and I heard that emergency vehicles won't be able to get through. In fact, I've never seen a problem, whether it's police or otherwise, having to get through. So maybe that's just something I can't connect with right now or haven't seen. But that's where I stand against it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Urbanski?
A question for Mr. Khasho. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is there a new state law which says that cities can't insist on apartment complexes demanding more than one parking space per unit? I thought I saw that somewhere in city planning, and I thought that's crazy, especially when we try to electrify vehicles. Where's everybody going to charge their? Are people going to come back to us and say we have to put charging posts every 10 feet or something on the street? I don't get it, but is that correct, that the Oregon state law is that you can't demand that builders put more than one parking space per unit?
At this time, I follow what actually the city follows the development code, which, there is a certain number for each apartment units. So far, I haven't heard of that law yet. And we have with us Molly Rabinovitz, which is, she's the parking manager. Maybe she heard this. I haven't heard it yet, so.
I can just see this problem getting worse. We're sitting on a time bomb, especially when vehicles get electrified. We're going to be dealing with these problems all the time, I fear.
Truly, cars are not going to go away. They'll just switch from gasoline to electric. And you have to look at it, depending which area you are in. Like if you're in the downtown areas, most of the time there is available transit, like we have light rail, we have bus service. So you expect that people who live in those areas, they will use mass transit. But the minute you start expanding and going outside the central city, you know, it gets more rural looking. Transit is not that good in those areas. So yeah, people are gonna drive. And most of the time, you know, people, they have garages too. I mean, those townhomes, they all have garages, but most of the people, they don't use their garage to park their cars. They use it to store stuff.
Or
But
bicycles.
I think if the problem persists and there is a parking problem, then maybe people will start cleaning their garages and park in it too. You cannot just keep adding parking, you know, and use the land for parking. It's got to be used for better options like, you know, multifamily housing and increase the density. That's the way it should be used for. But we have to find the balance, and the city always try to do this. I mean, our parking numbers are not low. The parking requirements for multifamily or single family or whatever we have, or businesses or commercial, they're not that low. They're kind of average and they're well balanced.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then Mr. Khasho, if you could answer two questions before we go on, because they've come up before: the commercial vehicle parking and the on-street parking. What is the actual ruling on a delivery vehicle that, I guess, whether is the perception whether they do or do not block space for vehicles or other cars to get through?
Typically, those vehicles are not wider than 7 feet or so. So the street will get little bit, because of the feeling, you know, it's taking the full space. Then drivers will tend to slow down a little bit more. But the space is there to pass. But you have to be careful when you pass. You don't pass at 25 or 30 miles per hour. You'll pass probably at 20 or less when you go through these areas, which is actually, it's good for residential areas. Then you won't have any speeding. And it will also cut through traffic, because people who cut through are always in a hurry and they want to go too fast. So they chose not to go through the 160th. They'll go to 158th, where it's 5 lanes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, Stephanie, next person.
Is Mecca Hall?
Thank you. And Mecca, if you will state your name, address, and whether you're for or against the motion is written, please. Thank you.
Hi there. It's Mika Hall.
Mika.
My address is 1170 Southwest 160th Avenue. I am against the proposal, or the, and I guess I'm glad to have the additional information around why this has come about. I know that I had some thoughts on it, so I do appreciate you guys having this forum here. I've lived in the neighborhood for 10 years, and as you guys, I agree with a lot of what has been said. The road is definitely narrow for 2 vehicles to drive through with parking on both sides. However, it's doable. You know, and it's definitely challenging, especially for the large vehicles like the FedEx, UPS delivery drivers and waste management and such. However, you know, I live right on 160th, and so I also have been stuck behind vehicles. At the end of the day, if I really need to get through, I will just go down one of the side streets and go around. To me, that is a small thing, whereas I know it's definitely an inconvenience for people. But like it's been said, it is a residential neighborhood. You know, when I did move in, we, of course, there's been additional development. So our townhouses right here have been, they were sandwiched by abandoned or dilapidated lots. And over time, of course, we have development, which is expected. But of course, I've seen and observed traffic on 160th becoming more dangerous over recent years, especially, yes, with construction and a lot of, like you've mentioned, people cutting through maybe to go to Costco or just to avoid the lights on 158th. And yes, more residential traffic. I actually am shocked at the number of vehicles a day, but it does make sense with the numbers on the north end coming out of that baseline 158th apartments. The level of speeding, though, at all hours of the day is extremely concerning to me because it, especially for such a short stretch of road. We've already established there's limited parking already. And we all know that, yes, it will become worse as development happens on 160th. With those two developments, the Leaf and baseline 158th, from what I've heard from people that live there, there's not actually even sufficient parking for the residents, which is a continual challenge. And I know that's not decided here. It's more of a planning situation, but it is a matter of fact. I've also heard that many residents of baseline 158 don't park there because of the cost, and they just choose to park on the street, which is, again, not in our jurisdiction tonight, but it's just a factor. So yeah, obviously it's going to become worse if we've got new development coming in. I don't know if it was mentioned, I think it was, but the major surrounding streets have zero parking available. For example, 158th Avenue, obviously there's no parking on that busy road now, or not now, there wasn't. J Street and Baseline Road, no parking on those streets. In addition to that, on 160th, there are only 3 side streets, one of which is a dead end, which somebody mentioned, Mortondale Lane, and all of those streets, all 3, have parking on one side only already. You know, it has been shown, you know, wider residential streets tend to experience higher speeds. And there's also a correlation between average speed and opposing traffic volume, particularly on narrow streets like ours, where drivers have to pull over and let other vehicles go by. And yes, we definitely have some impeding of traffic flow, but I am of the opinion, I appreciate the fact that it reduces the speed, some of the speed of the two-way traffic. And being in the city now, I know we were unincorporated, but the community vision includes enhancing livability. And I just don't see how removing the needed parking would do this. And I would rather that the city be able to focus on ways to reduce the traffic speed on our street, as opposed to removing parking to allow for a faster traffic flow. I mean, noise, accidents, etc. We all, you know, can agree that there's, you know, lower traffic speed would be ideal, as opposed to parking being removed. Things that personally I would love to see in our neighborhood is citations for speeding. And I know we've got many other problems in the world that are grander than this. However, it's just getting worse and worse. And it's amazing how fast people can go for such a short period. In my opinion, I'd love to see it be 20 miles an hour and not 25. I would love to see speed bumps added. Not that I love driving over speed bumps, However, this is only going to get worse. One suggestion from a neighbor, which I think is actually a brilliant idea, is if something must happen major, that perhaps we look at making it a one-way street as opposed to 2 lanes, and with parking on both sides. I do understand the areas with the ditches that are not developed yet. Currently, it is tricky. Oftentimes those are left open from people because there's not really parking there, but sometimes people do try to squeeze in. I personally don't know if I would even want us to officially remove the parking in those areas. I would hope that when new development does happen, they will have to build a sidewalk in front of that area, which would also, I believe, widen that street just a little bit.
Is there an HOA for this, ma'am?
Yes, there is an HOA. It's the Merlot Station Townhome HOA.
And what's the HOA decision been discussion? What's the discussion points been? I see that it doesn't sound like anybody from the HOA has attended this meeting.
I was on the last meeting for the HOA, and I did bring up this issue, and I did ask that we as a neighborhood community become involved. I asked that possibly they communicate the importance of this decision out to neighbors. There was no response from them, and there was no communication.
Okay, so the HOA apparently not too worried about it. All right, thank you. Appreciate the input. Are there other questions? I did hear that speed was a very big concern. Have you reached out to the police and asked them about monitoring?
We used to have the police come through the neighborhood regularly, and I have spoken with them on different occasions. I have not gone and done any formal complaint. It has been on my mind. It's just been one of those things that has been eating away at me, and I just have not done it. But
okay, it's a big issue of safety. I heard you mention it several times. So, and I think we've heard it from others that speeding is an issue. So I would definitely encourage you to reach out as soon as you can.
I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Comments, questions? All right, thank you. And I appreciate your time, Mika. Thank you. Stephanie, you said there were a couple more people?
Yes, now I have Ken McFarling.
Okay, thank you. Ken, again, as everyone else, you mentioned, state your name, address, and whether you're for or against the motion as written, and then please make your comments.
Ken McFarling, 16033 Southwest Gage Lane. That's just west of 160th. I would be currently against it as written. And my reasons as follows. I use 160th pretty much every time I leave home. And while the street is narrow, I often have to go slow because there's not a lot of room. I often pass people on it. I often have to stop a minute for people getting in and out, having their doors open, or delivery trucks, but it's never blocked my passage for more than a moment. The on-street parking in this area, not just 165th, but as a previous commentator mentioned, has been full for a long time, particularly since the large apartment complex directly to the west was built. I think they massively under allocated parking. The city may make the assumption, as I noted, someone mentioned, the city may make the assumption that people have one car. That's not true. That's not going to be true anytime soon. And while I am a firm believer in mass transit and I ride light rail, when I'm going someplace that it goes and it's convenient, not every place I go is served by light rail or buses or anything, and particularly not necessarily at the hours I go. So I have one vehicle. It is always parked in my garage. I have people stop by, and sometimes they have a hard time finding parking nearby or anywhere. I think that the city may make the assumption that people should only have one car. That is a bad assumption on the city's part. I think we need to allow for what reality is, and that is that if two people live in one apartment and have two jobs, the odds of their being able to not have two cars might be rather low. I have a two-car garage. One half of that is filled with stuff and the other half is filled with my car. And so the only reason I park on this street is like if I was letting my car dry off after washing it, something like that. I know that there's delivery vehicles, there deliver appliances or UPS packages, FedEx, whatever, and they are in the, not on 160th, but on Gage Lane. People have to deal with that because the world today, a lot of things get delivered. I'm assuming that all these vehicles that are currently parked on 160th are legally parked, that they are, not abandoned vehicles, but they belong to someone in the area. And I don't know if they're parked there because it was too expensive to park somewhere else, or they don't have room, or what. But unless there's a way of identifying that those people do have some place to park off street that's convenient to them, that's acceptable to them, and it doesn't cost them too much, then I think they're going to be parked on the street now and in the future. Reducing the number of on-street parking spots just will cause the cars that are currently parked there to be parked somewhere else on the street.
Excellent.
They're not going to magically disappear. And for those reasons, I don't think that it's a good idea to try to reduce the on-street parking. It may solve a little issue. It will create a bigger issue.
And you don't feel there's a safety issue at all then?
As I said, pretty much because I'm like 20 feet west of 160th, that's my preferred direction to leave the house. I'm sometimes driving north or sometimes driving south. And I have to go slow because it's narrow. That's not a bad thing. It makes up for the lack of speed bumps. No, I don't think there's a safety issue.
All right, thank you. And all right, are there any questions of commission? Excellent, thank you. Appreciate your time then, sir. Stephanie, do we have, is there?
One more,
All right.
Trevor Farrell.
Trevor, and like everyone else, you just state your name, address, and whether you're for or against the motion as written. Appreciate it.
Oh, there we go. I had to click unmute. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. So my name's Trevor Farrell. I live at 15900 Southwest Mortondale. I am in favor of the motion as written. I'll keep my comments brief. I think most of the issues have been hashed out pretty thoroughly here. Given that I live on a dead end street that empties out into 160th, every trip that I make out of my home involves 160th. I have had several near collisions at that intersection of Mortondale and 160th, mostly due to the lack of visibility from the lines of cars parked right up to the corners of the streets. One of the issues that we run into is that because parking is so limited, there's a lot of illegal parking that goes on where people are right up on the corners and obstructing visibility. And I understand that this motion is not going to solve that, because I realized only too late that we're only dealing with the very ends of the street. So hey, it is what it is. But I still would maintain that I'm in favor of pretty much any restriction on parking on 160th. And any small move toward restricting that parking is fine by me. Personally, every summer I move one of my cars out there and dedicate the other half of my garage to storing my camping gear. I don't need to be doing that. That's just fine. Like I could use my garage to park my car. That's fine. And I suspect that there are others who are similarly situated. So
Right.
with that, I think I've probably said my piece.
Thank you. Are you also on Mortondale part of the, is that part of the HOA as well? The entire complex then?
It is. It is.
Okay, very good. All right. And, all right, very good. Thank you. I appreciate your time and comments. Are there any questions? Thank you, Trevor. Appreciate it. Stephanie, I believe you said that was the last one.
That is the last one, yes.
All right, and then a reminder for everyone that there are some comments that and follow-up comments in the chat for us. At this point then, no other public speaking. We'll close the public testimony portion and return for staff comments. There are two questions, Mr. Khasho, with regards to what was said. You covered some of them in your opening statement. The issues at large really are the sections of road that are really, I guess, technically grandfathered in because they have a home with no development or the Costco parking lot that did not have any change, correct? Those were put in during the county process. They didn't really, they weren't required to do anything.
Correct, and it will be improved if some development will occur at those locations.
Okay, so as a follow-up, in the case of the process going for widening that we talked about on Denny, both on the west side and on the east side, those road improvements will take both areas out. Laurelwood is also getting a sidewalk in. In a case like this, because the developer is required to that apartment complex to the east, up at the north, that'd be the northeast corner, they pay their development code fee. They also have to do the roadway improvement. Is there a reason, given this situation and setup, that there's a trigger or determination for when the other side of a roadway would be improved, even though, I mean, there's funding out there for it, and in a situation like this where you obviously have this kind of traffic flow, is there a trigger for when that happens?
It's on local streets, even up to collector streets. Typically, the improvements will happen through development or redevelopment. That's the only way it happens. The transportation development tax, and sometimes, you know, we get money from the county MSTIP program to improve roadways. You can spend the money only on arterials and collector streets. You cannot do improvements, you know, on local streets using these funds. So basically, we rely on redevelopment to improve those sections, or there are no sidewalks. Sometimes the city will find some funding to do improvements and add sidewalks only, like Laurelwood, one example that we did sidewalks on it. And there aren't that much funding for these projects. So we cannot say, yeah, we'll go out and improve the other side and everything will be fine at this time. So what we're trying to do here is just to improve the safety portion of the request, you know, by restricting parking where the shoulder is narrow. And true, if a car parks there, it will encroach into the traveled way. The rest of it we will not be touching. Even sometimes people are hesitant to park there, but then they take a chance and park and block traffic. And also there was some talk about high speeds on 160th. When we did the traffic count on Tuesday, actually we did the speed study while we were collecting that data. And the speed study showed that the 85th percentile speed, which is 85% of the drivers drive at or below the speed, was approximately 20 miles per hour, even less than 20. So there aren't a speeding problem on the street. And in dense areas, this is a high density area. You expect, you know, to when you're in a narrow street to wait for sometimes for a large vehicle to be able to pass. I mean, it's expected on these streets. Yes, there is a demand for on-street parking, but making the improvements at the ends, it's all gravel and mud, basically. I think it's by prohibiting parking, actually, it will improve the situation there somehow. So it's at the end, depending on what the commission just heard, and we're just trying to find the least restrictive solution without affecting parking that much on the street. That's what the staff goal is. And
Okay.
with that, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, and then one final question, though, I guess, when the staff did review this, when the police also reviewed it, I see the police report as always, and I appreciate the time and effort on that, Sergeant Sarah. The question that was asked was, where are they going to go? That's been one of the things that this commission has had to deal with. I know that we had the same situation 153rd when that was the 47 units with 5 extra guest spots. People had to go down the street and around the corner. Is there an expectation then of, I guess, where is that going to go and what will happen? And do you know about any of the future development in that section?
You mean at the south end of 160th?
Yes, sir. Well, yeah, at both, but the question came up, where is everybody going to park? I guess one of the questions, and maybe it needs to go to the HOA, is why aren't they taking the money that they're using to charge the parking and fixing the street? So I don't know. I mean, I'm asking, what are your thoughts that this, or what's the city's thoughts on where the question was, where am I going to park now?
When those multifamily units comes in, or the existing ones, they provided what's required by the development code as parking. For a single family unit, 1 bedroom, they're allowed to provide 1 parking space, and they did achieve this. If people chose to own 2-3 cars, that's their choice. But we cannot just keep building parking garages because somebody like to own 3 cars and live in 1 bedroom unit. Let's be truthful about it, and it's a lot of cost associated with it. And developers will not build anything if we say, hey, we're gonna need 3 parking spots per 1 bedroom apartment. It's never gonna happen. And parking is always comes with growth. You have more growth, you have more density, there is a parking issue. But there is ways, people start owning fewer cars, people start taking transit, people start using their garages. That's the solution to it. Yeah, there you could have also a parking permit system, but everybody who lives there could get a permit too. So typically permits are for people who come from other areas and park on the street. Because it was mentioned, could we have permits? So we have to keep trying to find that balance, And also with the pandemic, people are working from home now, and they used to, maybe own cars, and some did not own cars. So there is more cars on the streets, parked on the streets, in garages everywhere.
A follow-up on that, though, sir. The suggestion of one-way streets and the question about the permit parking, what it heard was people feel that people aren't parking where they're supposed to. So is the permit process something the city would manage, or is that something the HOA should take care
of? When they say the people are parking where they're not supposed to, does this mean they park at the corner? Does this mean they park somewhere within the block? they don't park in front of their home, it's really hard to tell what they mean by this. The parking permit will only allow people who live on the street to park on the street. So all those people in those apartments, they'll have the same rights like anybody who live on the street to get a permit and park on the street. You cannot be specific, this building is allowed to park, you know, using a parking permit to park on the street and others cannot.
Okay.
So a permit, a parking permit program will not solve this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Moore has her hand up.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Moore?
Yes, I think part of my concern was just addressed. Having lived in apartment buildings here as well as back east, I now live in a townhouse and I feel as though we have parking that is controlled, but oftentimes people from the apartments that are nearby are parking in front of my house because there's not adequate parking for them. This is not a new issue. We've never really addressed it here in this community. I have driven around much of Portland itself and I see that they try to use the permits, but it does tend to do the opposite of what I hear our city saying we want to do here in Beaverton. We want people to be able to shop in their community, to walk around in their community. But oftentimes, because so many of us do have multiple vehicles and we're accustomed to at least driving part of the way, these issues continue to be multiplied. I'm not sure what the overall solution is. Restricting parking is going to make things more difficult in the short run, but it will address, in my humble opinion, some of the safety concerns I'm seeing when we're looking at the chat there. There are many safety concerns. When you're hearing people, Mr. Khasho, saying people aren't parking where they're supposed to, from what I understood them to say, and my own observation is there is designated parking for the people who live in the apartments who are down the street from me. There's not enough of it. And so they're all finding it more convenient to park in front of my house. And when they do that, that means that fortunately I have a garage. I feel for the people who don't have a garage, who live in apartments, or some people who even buy a townhouse or buy a condo and there's no parking included or very little. And then also to make it New York style where you're paying to just have your car sit somewhere. I'm not certain that's the intention, but that's what's occurring. I could hear, I'm not saying I only heard with my ears, I hear the young man who was talking about his wife and baby having to go walk several blocks to go get in the car. If you've ever had a 2-year-old in the snow trying to go somewhere, this is not our ideal situation. We have only so much we can do, Mr. Urbanski, I agree with you. There's only so much this commission can do about this. Our city has not taken the authority that it can to address these issues when we initially allow all this development. And we're just seeing more and more development, which is causing more and more of the same challenge that's never been really addressed. I'm off my soapbox now. Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely some good points in there, given the city's suggestion for density and the ADU. I don't know as I ever heard in any of the presentations to the NAC what the expectation was for additional parking when ADUs were approved within the city. So excellent point, Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Urbanski?
A question for Mr. Khasho. The 2 points where you have marked the north and the south for the proposed restrictions, I looked at those parking areas. It's a terrible place to park because the shoulder is not flat. It slopes down into a drainage ditch in both cases. So does that mean when people do park there, they're parking further into the middle of the road? In other words, it's a bigger constriction by parking there. So if that's the case, I can see a safety reason for not allowing parking there. If you've got anybody else in the car, passenger, you need to give them space, otherwise they'll fall into the ditch. So you're going to park a little bit towards the midline of the road. So is that true when cars do park there, they're causing a major constriction?
You're correct, yeah. That's what's happening in those areas.
Okay. So I think you have a very good compromise here, and I'm supportive of it.
Okay, and just to be clear then, Commissioner Urbanski, to Mr. Khasho, the parking restrictions basically amount to the non-improved areas, correct? When I looked at the map and I tried to look at everything, the parking restrictions are only for the areas that do not have a finished curb, is what it amounted to.
Yes, on the north end, it's just next to that ditch and narrow shoulder, very narrow shoulder. It's like 2 feet shoulder there. As Commissioner Urbanski described it, you know, if you park there, part of your vehicle will be in the ditch, part of it will be on the pavement. On the south end, we're leaving parking open where the wide shoulder is. So we're just asking to restrict parking where that ditch is. And not too many people try to park there. It's really steep and there are no shoulder on that side.
Okay, sorry, Sergeant Shaw.
To Mr. Urbanski's his question. So I went through there today, and that's exactly how the cars are parking. They're parking farther into the middle of the lane. All of them parked on that side of the road, closest to Costco. We're doing that, restricting that end smaller than the road it would be normally. And I feel for the people that are in here. We have parking problems all over the city. But again, restricting that down further is what's happening, Mr. Urbanski.
Thank you, Sergeant, sir. Appreciate that. Other comments? All right. I think that one thing that we should know first, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. I'd like to thank everyone who came out and attended this evening to speak. I appreciate the comments, also the follow-ups in the chat, some discussion and follow-up, which I would note that in a typical public hearing would actually not be allowed between the people who spoke. You'd have to go out in the hallway, because talking during the public meeting, there is no chat room in our typical meetings in the dais. So that is something that's interesting and for the commission to see that we don't typically see. The other thing is that regardless of what the decision is this evening, there is always the potential to change that. There is also always an opportunity to present a new case, new alternatives, or to ask the city engineer to make a new referral. I heard a couple of options. One was one-way streets. That's certainly something you could do as well. One thing I am interested in or point out is that I'm interested that no one from the HOA chose to attend or speak, none of the board. So just something to point out that I find interesting in a situation that has several people speaking quite passionately. So thank you both on both sides. With that in mind, then, we would take any final discussion, comments by anyone, or a motion to approve as written, to approve with changes, or to deny the motion. Vice Chair McClean.
Yeah, I'll just add my comments. I think, going back to the original concern of the narrow street, 27 feet, the unpaved shoulder. I understand the concern if people are parking into the lane. I think, this is one of those situations where there's people on both sides that have different opinions, and a lot of these things are really subjective. How do you measure safety if there aren't, a high number of accidents reported or other ways to quantify safety concerns? It's hard to say. And there's obviously, I think everybody was in agreement, there's a need for parking. I know there's a lot of conversations about whose responsibility for parking. It's really everybody's responsibility, including the developers of those places. Most development won't have a one-to-one or multiple parking spaces to unit ratio. So I think my opinion is I really want the community to work together to come back. I think right now I wouldn't be comfortable voting yes. until we had some more conversations or more discussions from both sides to say, hey, this is what we're seeing, this is our solution. Even if we're only losing 13 or maybe, plus or minus 13 parking spots, you think that's not a lot. But if there's already not parking now, is that a way for, safety to improve? I don't really hear, oh, these parking spots are dramatically going to improve safety. I think a better solution would be is if cars are parking in the road, utilizing the Beaverton police to enforce cars parking in the road, and to discourage people from doing that would be a better solution. So I think right now I'd rather have the community work together and come up with a better solution. It's really hard when you vote one way and make half the people upset or half the people happy. I'd rather wait and have more discussions in the future.
Are you asking to table the motion?
No, I'm not making any motions right now. I'm just sharing my opinion.
Okay, very good, because that is something that would be interesting to have the HOA and the city. And the HOA, Mr. Khasho, has not approached you at all in any of these conversations, any discussions in any of this work?
No.
Not at all. It's just fascinating to me that there's this. And Vice Chair McClean, I'm definitely not taking away from what you said. I think we've heard it before, but it's interesting that I don't have a bulk of people who said that there's an issue coming out to a public hearing that they can publicly say, we have an issue, please help us. Nor did they reach out to the city at all. So I'm not sure what the neighborhood as a whole can address that. All right. Any further discussion or motions? Yes, Commissioner.
I just wanted to share that these are very difficult situations in which the Traffic Commission is put in, because today's decision, no matter which way it goes, it's not going to make everybody happy. It really isn't. Usually our role is to try to make things better. Our role is, I've worked with this commission here for a while now, and we're never trying to make the situation worse. So I hope the community knows and understands that we really do try to hear them out and try to make the situation better. Traffic is difficult. It's only getting more challenging as we become more dense here in Beaverton. It's a great place to live, and it looks like the secret is out and more people are knowing about us. We still love our cars, though. Most of the people here in Beaverton, it's true, own more than one vehicle. I think this is a problem also where the local HOA, their community, like the townhouse HOAs, need to be involved in. Also, I formerly owned a townhouse at one time or another, and it was a requirement back then that we had to park our cars in our garage. If you had to park your car then on the driveway. We could not park our cars on the road then. So some of that was the local private enforcement to help, and it seems to be that some of that needs to be happening there. Instead of, I know we liked our trinkets too, and be saving it, but if you want to have a vehicle or more than one, then if you purchase a facility with a parking amenity there, it should be used for that. So sometimes our own community members are causing and contributing to this problem, and we can also be part of that solution. Also in the future, our parking is getting worse, yes, and I'm hopeful that there could be better coordination with public transportation. Khasho talks about the public transportation, all these things, but the reality is that we don't have very good coordination here in Beaverton with TriMet and some of that. It needs to get better, because it doesn't make sense at times. I can tell you as a parent, as a mom of a child, then I'm not going to take public transportation to take me somewhere, so it's going to take me an hour, when truthfully I can get there in 20 minutes with my car, because our public transportation isn't as great as it could be, let's say, in Portland. So some more of those conversations need to take place to make TriMet better, so it can actually be useful and the community will want to take part in it and use it. If not, it's just there. As the motion stands right here, I'm not in favor of it, just because the reality is most of the community here is not complaining, the locals there, about how the parking is used. They want their parking. And they're the ones that are going to be more impacted than me, and they here by us taking that parking away. So I'm in favor at this time. Even like Commissioner McClean is indicating that hearing more discussion from the community to see if really that's the right way to go. But right now, it is a problem, but the community, the people that are immediately being impacted by it are happy the way they are. It is.
Okay, Commissioner Moore, do you have your hand?
Yes, I do.
And then Commissioner Urbanski next. Please.
Before you asked if there was a motion, I was on the cusp of asking if there was any way we could put off making a decision. And then I realized that the issue could be tabled. I wasn't sure there was enough consensus toward that. I'm not certain that we need more testimony, but I feel as though that the impact of what we do is it could immediately have some impact on this community. And I'd like to be able to make a more informed decision. The people who showed up today, for the most part, were people who were saying, no, we don't want this. Doesn't mean that there's not more support. It's just that happens to be a preponderance to me. And I'm with Melissa, not Melissa, I'm sorry. That saying that basically from what I'm hearing and from what I've been able to observe here, it sounds as though we could be causing more havoc than is necessary. They're feeling as though it's fine like it is, but I believe that we can come up with a better solution than what we currently have offered here on paper, which is why I guess I would be in agreement that I'd be against it unless we want to table it and then we address it in another way. My other concern that also came up when Commissioner Bobadilla was speaking is that for the most part, when we are dealing with this particular issue about parking, it comes close to home because we're dealing with, this is how people deal with their families. This is how people get to work. Truth be told, even in a major city, I moved here from Chicago. I still had to have somewhere for my car to be so I could get my car to the big train to get me to downtown Chicago. You still need that other car. We've got to find some better solution for being able to help our community get to the place where they are willing to try to take public transportation, because right now it's not practical for the average person and it's not connected enough. I couldn't get to my current job without driving. There's no way for me to get there without having to get in a cab after I got to Wilsonville to come back to Lake Oswego. Makes no sense. And I completely get where these people are coming from. Enough. That's all I have to say regarding that. I would like for an opportunity to be able to explore different possibilities, and perhaps that means I'm against the way it's currently written, the petition.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Urbanski.
When I first read the proposal, I thought this was a very pragmatic compromise between pro and against the parking restrictions. But listening to the comments today and reading the sent in comments, I'm disappointed because nobody's giving way. Either people are completely against it, in other words, no parking restrictions, or parking restrictions along the whole street. So what I thought was, a good compromise, you're going to lose 13 parking spaces, increase the safety of the street. Nobody's going to be happy. So we need to come up with something else. Or the people who live there need to meet and sort it out themselves.
Yes, thank you. And again, I think it's interesting that the community as a whole did not reach out to the city. It doesn't sound like the NAC has been involved at all. Commissioner or Vice Chair McClean noted 13 spaces is a small number to some, it's a huge number to others. I don't get a true sense of the other parking options. Also, where's the money going? That if it's really that important, will you pay to get your parking spot? Does this force people to pay? I think it also brings up a situation of things that we're just seeing again all over as you're adding, we're adding more people and we're not going to expand and grow. I think the discussion down at Tile Flat Road is an excellent example of what this commission could potentially end up facing because out there you're putting up a whole bunch of single family homes. Over here, you're putting in a whole bunch of townhouses with no parking. So a big yard, big street, big home, single family dwelling in a large neighborhood. And here we're kind of crowding them in. So it's a discussion that needs to kind of work through some things. What I'm hearing then is potentially, Mr. Khasho, can we ask the community to provide more input to the city on the balance between, because to me, there's definitely a safety issue. I don't like that people, we've already seen that over on Southwest Barrows, where people, and there was no place there. They were just parking on the shoulder. They were out into the road. We had an issue there. Here, there's definitely a safety issue, but at the same time, I'm hearing that there's no place for these people to park. So this supposedly is a wall in a hard place. It seems like there definitely is a solution. I think that if you pass the motion that they would make it work, because people make it work, but is that forcing them to do it, or is there a way to meet with the city and come up with some options before we do this?
Potentially, yeah, they can approach the city and talk about their issues. What staff try to do here is to find a happy medium. We're not saying we're gonna restrict parking, the whole street length. We looked at it and we found, yes, in those areas, it could be narrow, and then two vehicles may not be able to pass at the same time. One of them may need to stop or slow or to let the other vehicle pass by. And like I said, in very high dense areas, this is acceptable. But it seems here some of the residents, they don't like it to be this way. So we're trying to find the happy medium, and it seems that happy medium will be impacting the whole neighborhood. They want to keep the parking. I want to mention also, I just briefly looked at the crash history on that street. There aren't any crashes happening because of the street is narrow. There was one crash that happened last year, and some pickup truck just turned in, and somebody was turning out of their driveway, and basically they swerved a little bit and hit a parked car. But that's the only crash there. So people they need to be, if they want to keep it this way, they have to expect to be patient. In case it gets blocked, they have to wait a little bit, let the other person pass. While we're looking, and monitoring parking on the street, we observe, FedEx and UPS, because the street is fully parked, there are no places for them to park. So what they end up is parking in the travel lane to do their deliveries. So here you have to choose, you want your deliveries and the UPS park in the middle of the street. You have to accept it if you want your deliveries to be in, or you take parking away and you'll have some place for those trucks to come in and just temporarily park, drop their stuff and move on. So we always have to find this balance, are we gonna complain about every little delay or, parking? I truly, as staff, we cannot cure these issues. People chose to live there, and it should be anticipated that you will be exposed to these things this way too.
Thank you. Other comments? All right, then. We can believe we're closed the deliberations. Also, if there is no motion, then we would also move on.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
we need to have a motion. Either you deny the proposal and just leave it the way it is, or if you have other ideas, we will change the final written order based on your decision, or you will accept what staff is recommending.
All right. In that case, then basically, we're losing. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Moore. I'm sorry, I was trying to prepare a comment. Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to confirm that tabling it was not an option, Mr. Khasho.
That's the commission choice. You know, you do the motion whichever way you like it to be.
Yeah, I think normally it's approve with modifications or deny, but we could make a motion to discuss this in future meetings, which essentially tables it until we just vote eventually, but we would eventually have to vote on it. So yes, as the commission, we can decide to table it for a future meeting, or if we don't have a consensus, we could vote to deny it now. Doesn't mean that, you know, staff could come up with a new proposal in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Khasho, please.
Yeah, but you need to have a motion, so we'll rewrite the final order based on your decision,
Correct.
regardless what we're going to do in the future with it.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm sorry, Commissioner Bobadilla, were you gonna?
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
I was making a motion. If that's all.
Just checking. Then if you made a motion to change things, you would have to rewrite that and we would vote on it on the next, or we would not sign it until the next.
You will vote on it tonight, whichever decision you need to make. But at the next meeting, we will bring the final written order based on your decision tonight. It will be on consent, just to say, yeah, this is what we voted on last time, and for signature.
Okay, we're losing 13 parking spots. I only heard 4 people speak against it. So, Commissioner Bobadilla.
Yeah, sorry, it's okay. I think it just came to my mind what Khasho just mentioned. Thank you.
Okay. I only heard from 4 people who are against it. I didn't hear from anybody at the community level. There's been no feedback from the city. I do understand there is a limitation. I do consider part of the deal. I will make a motion that we approve with modification that the center section of the parking remain, and that the section on the south side be enforced, as there are no property owners on that side of the street, which would be the Costco parking lot would remain, or would include the proposed parking restrictions on the on the southwest section, and the northwest proposed parking restrictions be excluded at this time to begin the process in a slow and clear manner. Commissioner Bobadilla.
Chairman Conway, can you please elaborate on what does that mean, and how many parking spots are they losing after all then?
I don't know how many exactly. What I'm proposing, what my motion is that we do not do this all in one fell swoop, but we take the area of parking restrictions near J Street on the southwest corner, because there is no property on that side of the street. It's a parking lot. There is no homeowners there. It's away from what we heard other people talk about, safety and walking, speed. It also, it is having gone through there. People are parking. They're trying to fit in. It basically becomes an overflow. And when it's an overflow, to me, it's a situation that's more, as I think several people have noted, you kind of become encroaching more and more on the road, the more you become an overflow last ditch effort. So removing the southwest corner, but leaving for now the northwest corner, because there is the parking complex across the way, and begin this in a slow and in a partial process. And that is basically mounted the fact that I only heard from 4 people say no. No, I didn't hear from, I heard 2 people say yes, because it's a safety issue. I heard nobody in the community talk about it. Commissioner Urbanski?
I'm just trying to do the maths here. We're trying to make everybody happy, which isn't going to happen. But if we pass the motion, everybody's going to be unhappy. Everybody we listen to today, the people for the restrictions, people against the restrictions, will be unhappy. If we don't pass it, at least a significant proportion of the people we heard today will be happy. So based on the math alone, we should pass this, because at least some of the people will be happy with that result. If we go yes, everybody's unhappy. Is that the way you see it too?
Right. Well, what I heard was I heard from 6 people, the gentleman who proposed this, and one other person said that they were in favor of it, which is 2 that were for it. Only 4 people were against it. This impacts 13 parking spots, and supposedly everybody in the neighborhood is concerned about safety issues, speed. They want traffic calming. They talked about permits, one-way streets. This is terrible. I don't have enough room to park. Everything's going on. I only heard from 6 people. I didn't hear from any organization as a whole in the community. I didn't hear from other people. And so I understand that this is going to be a situation, but if this was that untenable, I would definitely be at a public hearing that says, hey, this could impact what's going on. So maybe it's just a perception of, you know, does everybody go down 160th, or are there that many that go down 162nd? Do they take 163rd? Why does everybody go down 160th? Vice Chair McClean?
Yeah, thank you.
I hope I answered your questions.
I agree, Commissioner Urbanski, that based on focusing on which people would be less upset voting no, I think we can't just look at what people's opinions are. I think, you know, we need to look at the Traffic Commission, you know, guidelines. Are we increasing safety? Are increasing, you know, pedestrian vehicle movement? Are we increasing or helping the parking? You know, I think we really need to focus on what's best for the city, following the Traffic Commission, you know, guidelines. I agree, though, that Mr. You know, Conway, Chair Conway, what we're hearing is just from a minority of the hundreds of people that live there. But there was also written testimony that was submitted for people who were against. I don't have a tally of how many were actually yes or no, and if one person represents other people. So I don't know if we can always just go based on, you know, we heard 2 yeses and 4 nos. But I think overall, the community, like Commissioner Urbanski said, it's not going to be happy with either decision. Either we restrict parking or we don't improve the, you know, easy accessible for 2-way traffic on that street. I think really focusing on the safety issue again, you know, if it was a slam dunk to my personal opinion that yes, this safety is going to be improved, I would say absolutely. You know, if there was multiple crashes or pedestrian, you know, accidents or other ways to quantify safety, which is really hard to do, it's very subjective, I would say yes, let's prevent that. I think my personal opinion is utilizing Beaverton Police to enforce cars parked in the street. If that blocks the street, I think that's something that police should be able to enforce. So my opinion is I don't see a dire safety issue. I think absolutely there's a delay, there's maybe an annoyance, there's a frustration when, you know, trucks or commercial vehicles are parked and you can't get by, but I don't know if that's a safety issue. So I think, you know, my personal opinion is we should vote no. And if there is additional concerns, let the community work together to prioritize those concerns and come back with the, you know, traffic issue. I think Mr. Khasho did a fantastic job trying to compromise. I applaud the effort, but personally, I don't think, you know, we should make any changes at this time, but that's just, again, my opinion.
Commissioner Bobadilla?
If I can quickly chime, Commissioner McClean, I agree. I think that we should vote on what has been presented, what has been brought to us by staff. I appreciate what staff did. It was very creative. Staff tried to find a happy medium. Given everything that we've heard and read, including the written testimony that's been submitted, that's still valuable. I would prefer that we would vote on what is being presented, whether we agree, vote for it or against it, not table it for another day. People need to move on.
Are they going to be able to move on, though? It seems like a solution is going to need to be addressed because you still have half the people who are upset and half the people who are not. Just a question.
Yeah, I think, you know, for short term, I think that my solution would be, you know, if cars are parked in the street, to utilize the Beaverton Police say, hey, there's a car blocking the street or portion of the street. I think, based on my personal opinion and Commissioner Bobadilla, I'll make a motion to deny TCA 25 as written. So again, the motion's to deny it. So if we vote yes on the motion, we're denying the TC order. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, motion's been made, motion's been seconded. Final discussion on that then? All right, in that case then, roll call. Commissioner Bobadilla? Commissioner Bobadilla, yea or nay?
Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
muted.
Oh, yay. Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Vice Chair McClean?
I'll vote yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Nay.
Commissioner Urbanski? You're on mute.
You're on
sir.
mute.
But this is a double negative. Yes, meaning we're denying it, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So yay.
Okay, very good. And Chair Conway, I'm going to abstain on this one because I think there are other options available. So is it all right? Motion then passes 4-0 with 1 abstain.
Oh,
Oh, it's
3-1.
3-1.
Commissioner
Oh, you're
Moore
right.
voted
Okay.
no.
You're right. You're right. Thank you. 3-1-1. So motion does pass to deny the motion as written, and basically the situation then stays the same. So thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Khasho.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, for the next meeting, we will bring a revised final written order for signature. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, with that in mind, then we move to the next portion, which was a presentation. Mr. Khasho.
Yeah, we have a presentation about the downtown parking, and we have our parking manager, Molly Rabinovitz, and we have Chase Landry from the city. We also have the consultant, Julie DIXON, and so the floor is for you guys.
Great, thank you, Jabra. Good evening, Commission. Thank you for letting us join you tonight. I know it's already been a long evening, so hopefully we can get this information over to you real quick. We've been working on the downtown parking management and action plan with Julie DIXON and her team at DIXON Resources Unlimited. And we've done our first round of full community engagement, and Julie and her team have been working with our staff to come up with our first round of draft recommendations, which is what we're here to discuss tonight. We have a second round of community engagement planned, and then there will be another draft plan review, and then hopefully final adoption. With that, I'm actually going to remain as quiet as possible. I have sleeping children and dogs and all that fun stuff, and so I'm going to let Julie give the presentation, and Chase has some questions at the end, but I'm always here to chime in if there's a question. So Julie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And Chase, I'm going to ask if you could share your screen if you don't mind, and our presenter of the PowerPoint. Thank you so much, Chase. And it's very nice to see everybody here tonight. And again, I know that you all have been talking for quite a bit, so we'll try to be as expedient as possible and making sure that we're still as thorough as possible. So as Molly mentioned, this is specifically for the Downtown Parking Management Action Plan. And so Chase, if you'll go to the next slide, one of the areas that you'll see here with the map is the area in which we are focused on. I think that some of you have seen us before. So my name is Julie DIXON. I'm a parking and transportation consultant, and we've actually been engaged with the city now for over a year. We've definitely survived COVID together, and have been working on this plan. And one of the things that I think is really important to emphasize, and we'll talk about this throughout the process, is just how important community engagement has been. Throughout the previous part of the pandemic, there was a lot of online outreach, and then we've been able to, as you know, things have been opening up, be able to do a little bit more customized outreach, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But I think it's really important when we talk about the downtown parking action plan, management action plan, is that the incremental recommendations that we're going to be talking about tonight are really based upon not only community feedback, but also on industry best practices. And we've tried to tie in, as much of the previous study work that's been done and, the city's strategic plan, and really trying to tie it all together. And there's just a couple of key elements on the project besides the actual action plan itself. We're also looking to, we call it future-proof the municipal codes so that they're basically ready for, whatever twists and turns may happen or whatever developments may come, as well as being able to put what we call a financial projection workbook together so that we can ensure that we're developing a sustainable solution, a program that pays for itself. And then most importantly are those details associated with the implementation manual and somewhat of the very specifics of the timelines and the checkboxes. And as Chase goes to the next slide, one of the things that I really want to highlight about today is that the recommendations that are tied into here are really based on data and based on what happens in Beaverton. So it's not to say that everything's going to happen overnight, nor is it to say that everything will ultimately be implemented. What's really neat about this particular action plan is that it's very much adaptable to Beaverton, so that as implementation occurs, we get to basically see the effects or impacts of that implementation task. And if it's working and we don't need to make any further changes, that's terrific. But just hearing from some of the things you all shared earlier tonight, I think we can all appreciate that parking is a living process and something that has a great impact within and throughout your communities. So as we're talking here tonight, I wanted to be sure that if anybody had any clarifying questions that they had, please don't hesitate to ask them at that time. People say I do talk a lot and I tend to talk pretty fast, but I'll try to take some breaths occasionally so to leave you some space in case you want to ask any questions. But when we basically are going through the presentation, I'd love for you to be sure to consider some of these questions that we have listed on here. So that as we're going through the recommendations and through the approach, I wanted to make sure that you were thinking about, how these experiences, would work for all of you, for your experience as residents. What are the priorities right now when we really think about this approach, and really thinking about, how we're navigating our way through the downtown. And then at the end, we'll definitely look forward to some of that feedback and critique. And again, just looking forward to hearing again some of the feedback and priorities that you all have. So Chase, if we can go to the next slide. One of the things that's especially important was making sure that we really had defined guiding principles. And this is something that happened very early on in the project. And it's something that we've really tried to make sure that all aspects of the project are considering these guiding principles. So to be sustainable, to be equitable, to be adaptable, and to be positive. I think that that's something that when you really think about parking, you might not always consider these factors, but it's something that as the city, we really have to be mindful of and aware of. The fact is that parking technology, parking management, parking spaces, garages, signage, that all costs money. And we want to be realistic in our approach, because the fact is that there's a lot of really innovative things that are happening out there, some of them very cutting edge. But do we want to be the guinea pig in Beaverton to be the ones that try those things out? Or do we want to make sure that some things are maybe tested in other locations before we roll them out here? So that when we talk about that equitability, we have to make sure that we keep in mind the fact that not everybody has a credit card, not everybody has a mobile phone, and we want to make sure that we consider that when we talk about accessibility as well. And so when I talk about also positive and adaptable, when you hear me talk about parking, I like to talk about parking in a very positive way, because what I like to consider is that parking is a customer service extension of the city. And it's something that when we talk about a vibrant downtown experience, we want to make sure that people have a very positive experience when they visit our downtown. And whether it be on car, whether it be on bike, whether it be on train, whether it be on foot, we want to make sure that people can navigate the downtown in a very convenient and safe way. And that's why we have to make sure that our solution is adaptable and we can pivot based on whatever happens next. So Chase, as we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about some of the stakeholder outreach. Maybe you saw us out there. I have to tell you, I have never given away popsicles to get people's feedback for parking. but it went off gangbusters. And we actually gave away popsicles at several events. And those popsicles, by the way, were really good as well from one of your local proprietors. I tell everybody about Beaverton and their popsicles, but it was a really neat way to get the community engaged in the conversation. And as they were eating their popsicles on some of the hot summer days that we were out there, they were happy to share some of that feedback, which I'm definitely happy to share with all of you. We also conducted an online survey. It was posted in multiple languages, and we actually ran that survey from May 20th until July 6th. We had over 1,100 responses, and we have another survey that's getting ready to go out soon as well. I think that that's something that's really important, is that some of the creative out of the box ideas in terms of really getting that outreach. We went with Chase door to door, and I went and talked to some of the business owners. We had some business owners that actually came in on their vacations specifically to talk to us. So if that doesn't demonstrate how important this topic was to them, I don't know what does. But it's really been something too, even coming and speaking to all of you and the various boards and commissions throughout the city. It's really been about communicating the message and really talking about the impacts, because when I talk about adaptability, there is no perfect solution. There's no cookie cutter model for, how we're supposed to do this. And I think it's really important that based on that stakeholder feedback is that we're going to find a solution that's going to work well for Beaverton. And here's the thing, if something needs to be changed, that's an important part of that adaptability. And that's one reason why I always like to tell people there's no perfect parking management solution, but what we want to do is really find a solution that's going to be optimized specifically for Beaverton. And one of the recommended implementation steps, especially when we talk about stakeholder engagement, is establishing a technical advisory committee moving forward as well. That's something that we think will be really advantageous for the city as well. So if we go to the next slide, Chase. So I mentioned that we had a substantial amount of responses to our online survey. And I have to tell you, the survey went out to businesses, to residents, apartment managers, you name it. We tried to get the survey out to as many people as possible, promoting it through as many means as possible, whether it be through printed materials, whether through social media, the websites, or walkarounds, or what I like to call knock and talks. We really tried to get the message out there. And I think you can see from that response from the first survey, it really was a positive response. And we shared some of the statistics on here. I won't go through all of them, but I think that there's some important notes that come out of here. The fact that we have roughly about half of the residents that were surveyed don't need a permit today to park. You can see that half of the business owners in the downtown do not currently provide any private off-street parking for their customers. And another really good number for us to look at is that basically less than 2 hours is what we're seeing that most times customers are spending in businesses in the downtown. And so when you start to look at these numbers, you can kind of start to granulate where the recommendations really need to tie in. And one of the ones that we really took keen advantage of too, and it's that last one, is that half of all the respondents didn't know that there was free parking at the West Library lot. And one of the events that we went to was actually the farmer's market. And one of the things that we realized is that people love your farmer's market. I mean, that's a pretty amazing farmer's market, and I've been to plenty of them. But what they didn't realize is that under the ground where all of those farmers' booths are, that's a parking lot. And I don't think people really connotated that. And so in fact, we mentioned that to many of the people that we were talking to, is the fact that we're standing on the parking lot that you could park in when you come and visit the downtown. And sometimes it's as easy as that, is that people just don't recognize or realize. So we have to figure out ways to better communicate those types of solutions. So next slide, please, Chase. And so one of the things that was important too, when we did the online survey, the questions were very specific to before and after the pandemic. So that when we were really asking some of the questions, we were really trying to gauge people's responses and how they were differentiated based on, again, the pandemic and the impacts are things that we're all still feeling today. And so to recognize the frequency that people are visiting the downtown, and again, how frequently they're visiting by car, is something we have to really take into account. And I think some of the comments you all were making earlier is something that I think is really important to recognize. There's a lot of great concepts of what's going to happen in our future with transportation, but the fact is today, we're still pretty car reliant. And then with COVID, There's a lot of studies that have demonstrated that people aren't as easily or as comfortable returning to public transit. And those are all factors that we're going to have to deal with when we talk about what that parking impact is. But one of the really positive things when you see the statistics there on the left side is that downtown Beaverton is a very popular place to go, but I think you all probably already know that. And so when you talk about a destination that people like to visit, that's something that, again, is a good problem to have. And so the conversations that we're having here, as we go to the next slide, Chase, it really sums up the reason why we need to have this downtown parking management action plan. So from the engagement, whether it was on write-in comments from the survey or whether it was in person, you can see some of the comments. Now, what's interesting is sometimes you get both sides of the coin. Sometimes you get both responses on equal sides, but it's really important that when we're talking about coming up with a balanced approach, an adaptable approach, we want to hear all things. And I really have to highlight that too. We want to flip over every rock. We want to look behind every curtain because we really want to make sure that if people have groans or gripes, we want to know what those are because it's really important when we're talking about that solutioning. We want to make sure that we're coming up with something that's realistic and that's going to work for Beaverton. So you can see here just a summary of some of the items. You see some folks saying that they wish there was a parking garage being constructed in Old Town. We had some folks saying they wish there was more disabled parking located throughout the downtown. There's some folks that were saying we want 2-hour time limits. We had some people saying, when are we going to have paid parking? We had people saying we need more short-term spaces. So you can kind of see there's a whole opportunity across the board. One of the other ones that came up pretty constantly was the fact that people want us to reduce the size of some of the on-street spaces too. And so you can see we really kind of covered the whole gamut. But one of the other factors that I think was really important too was the significance of walkability. And people telling us that they wanted to make sure that they could feel comfortable walking from one side of the downtown to the other. That includes sidewalk access as well as lighting too. So some of those details, because this isn't just about parking, because I'm sure you all can appreciate when we talk about parking, parking connects the dots, whether it be first mile, last mile planning. It really is about, getting people in their cars and ultimately, hopefully, only parking once and being able to walk to their destinations and to be able to navigate their ways around through downtown. Next slide, please, Chase. So a couple of other updates we thought we would share with you. So coming in the fall, fingers crossed, the parking garage is getting close. And I have to tell you, I was really fortunate enough to be able to go on a tour of the facility. And I actually have given quite a few people sneak peeks throughout the industry because I have to tell you, it's really beautiful. I know it sounds ridiculous to say a garage is beautiful, but having been able to walk through the floors, the art and just the coloring, it really is a beautiful garage. I'm really excited to report that the city has selected their technology providers. And we actually have also brought on a parking operator that are basically primed and ready to be able to help launch that program. Also working with SKB on developing a rate structure and policies that are consistent for the district garage. Those conversations are in play right now. And I think it's also important when we talk about the parking garage, when we talk about rate structures, is developing permit rates that are basically considerate of low income or service workers, where basically parking permits will be cost affordable for people that need that. And then also coming up with special event policies to support the Performing Arts Center and other potential activities that may be going on throughout the downtown. And then also one of the things that not everybody loves when I talk about this, but what's funny is you actually had probably one of the most prevalent items that came up in the survey was the need for enforcement. Now, I like to talk about compliance because I like people to follow the rules, but I am very pleased to report that the city has selected a vendor that will be providing the parking ambassador role throughout the downtown, who will basically support the compliance and the outreach and the enforcement of the parking regulations. This is something that's really important when we talk about an impacted area like this, is to be able to have the consistency needed to be able to ensure that people are following the rules. And this is why it's important too. You don't hear me really talking about the implementation of paid parking. And the reason why is because we need to be sure that we're consistently managing the rules as they're posted today in order to determine what those next steps are, so that we truly can determine what the needs are and how much occupancy we really have and how the resources are actually being utilized today. And so that's going to be an important factor. I can promise you there is going to be a significant marketing, education, outreach campaign that comes along with that. That will mean warning notices, educational information, so that people understand that we're going to do some things a little bit differently than maybe they've been done in the past, because we want people to, again, follow the rules. That's the whole intention. And we know that maybe some folks have been getting away with some stuff for a while. That's all part of the process, because we're going to hopefully be able to take care of that. And basically by about the start of the year is when we're looking to roll out that part of the program. And then we'll really be starting to have conversations about occupancy and utilization, so that we can really talk about that equitable access to the curb and really talking about parking management decisions as we move forward. And one of the other things I should mention too is we're trying to optimize as much of the technology opportunities in the garage facility as well, in hopes of being able to really mitigate and manage and provide conveniences to the customers. But again, whether it be paying by cash, paying by card, paying by phone, those are all things that we want to try to create as contactless and as seamless of a process as possible. And the one other thing that I'm excited about, I mentioned the coloring and the paint throughout the garage, but we'll also be working on some different decaling and stickers and the way that we message the program, in addition to different merchant validation and incentive programs that will also support this program. If we can go to the next slide, Chase, please. So what I'd like to do now is just talk a little bit about the strategies. So what I've listed here is a summary of what we call the near-term strategies, basically what we're looking for over the next 1 to 2 years, basically from now until the next 2 years. Now, importantly, like I mentioned about being adaptive, some of these things could happen sooner or later. It really is dependent upon what happens at the dynamic nature of the curb. And one of the things you'll see there in the bottom right-hand corner, it says no reparking. And one of those keys for that is when we talk about time limit management or posted time limit zones, a really effective way to mitigate the curb and to not have to deploy other technologies or potentially even paid parking is a way to limit that curb access, because ideally, we want to treat the curbside as the premium parking. And ultimately, if you're going to come to stay all day or work downtown, we want you to park in an off-street location, because that's what off-street parking is intended for. It's where you can store your car, park once, leave it there, and then go flit about downtown and, you know, go dine, go hang out, go to a show, whatever the case may be. It's the curbside parking that we want to be sure that we're turning over and managing for the posted time limits. So a really effective way to do that, and other communities have been very successful with that, is being able to implement something like a no reparking zone. And that's something that we think could really have a big impact when we talk about the downtown. That's also something that's going to be key, so that when we talk about short-term parking spaces, which have really become prevalent as a result of the pandemic. So restaurants can offer quick, easy pickup spots so that people can run in and grab their food for food delivery services. Also for commercial loading, as well as those ADA parking spaces. Those are things that we want to make sure are consistently accessible and convenient throughout the downtown. We know that I've already mentioned the permit program, being able to revamp that program so that, again, it's very much accessible for our downtown employees, and in some cases our downtown residents. It's one thing I can't ignore, and I didn't really go into this very significantly in some of our earlier presentations. We talked about the spillover effect. It's one of the things that we know we've kind of readied our neighborhoods for, is the fact that the spillover effect, when we start to regulate and manage the downtown, it's possible that we might start to incur impact in our surrounding neighborhoods. And that's something we've basically readied ourselves for, so that when we have to make those decisions or those impacts, it's going to be really key. I mentioned park once, and this is something that is not necessarily really commonplace for a lot of people to understand what that means. But we will basically want you to park your car one time and then do all your downtown business so that you can navigate your way around town. I always use the example of, sometimes I go to those big box shopping plazas and I try my best to park in the middle, so that when I run to the pet store, when I run to the grocery store, when I run to the hardware store, I really should park in one spot and be able to walk through to those locations. But I gotta tell you, sometimes, just like everybody else, I fall prey to the fact that I need to go drive those short distances to get to those locations. And I'm just as guilty as everybody else, but I try my best to do the park once mentality. And that's something we really want to make sure that we take that same notion and bring that into our downtown. Most importantly, we really want to be cognizant of the data collection. One of the things that's really important, and if you've heard me speak on this before, is that we want to measure through data rather than perception. I say that because the industry standard is that when your curb space is at about 85% occupancy, it basically means you're near or at capacity. It's right about when you have about one space available per block face, and that's kind of your target, your ideal. Once you start to get past that, it basically means you're near or at capacity. And basically the parking industry is determined that's when you need to start making policy changes that could change time limits, policy changes that could change rates. Those are all factors that basically tie into what that basically means. Just really quick on a couple of the other items, I won't go deep into all of them. Wayfinding and signage is a really important factor, and that was also communicated from the stakeholder feedback. We want to make it easy for people to be able to find parking, and we know that the signage and branding is a big part of that. I already mentioned the fact that a lot of people didn't realize that the West Library lot was available for parking. So being able to leverage that into our messaging so that people can understand that they can park in those locations and easily walk to their downtown destinations. So if we can go to the next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit about the midterm strategies as well. And again, while this says 3 to 5 years, I want to make sure everybody understands these are not set in stone. Certain things could happen, the data could demonstrate certain responses, and some things could be expedited, some things could be slowed. And that's the one thing that I think is really important when we talk about an adaptable solution, that this is very much the strategy is to be able to make data measured decisions. And it's something that I will tell you is proven and has worked very effectively in other communities. And again, it kind of takes I like to say it takes the politics out of the discussion. And it really gets down to what are the true measures of occupancy at the curb. And it's something that I think is really a differentiator when we start to talk about equitability and access, is that it really takes the debate out of it and we can start to look at the facts and look at the statistics. So when we start to talk about midterm, again, maybe the density increases. We've got some new hot restaurant or some new hot shop that's bringing a lot of folks down there. I will say after going door to door, you guys got some pretty cool little locations that I really enjoyed exploring. But one of the things we might have to consider is other off-street parking opportunities for our downtown employees. You know, as the downtown grows, you know, as we have more development, these are all factors that we really need to be cognizant of. And then again, when I mentioned when we start to hit parking capacities, maybe we need to tweak the time limits. Maybe we need to make some adaptations to the time limit locations. Maybe we need to have some premium zones with maybe 1 hour parking or the like, maybe expanding them to the perimeter locations that have 3 hour time zones. Those are all factors that need to be taken into consideration. And we also really need to think about at that point, if we're starting to make those kinds of changes, is there a need for paid parking on street? But again, the data will demonstrate that, especially as we continue to provide that analysis. The other thing that's really important when we talk about the data is the level of transparency associated with that information. We want people to understand what the numbers are too, so that as those recommendations are coming forward, everybody understands the root of them and where they're coming from too. So, and then we can't ignore opportunities to improve congestion and to mitigate the parking impacts. And that could be things like car sharing, micromobility, being able to subsidize passes for transit. All of those factors basically tie in. And that's why I think it's really important to understand that myopically, we're not just talking about parking. This is a holistic solution focused on parking. But the fact is we can't silo the conversation because we have to make sure that we can, again, connect the dots. Next slide, please, Chase. And so on the possible long terms, and you see possible, because again, 6 years out, when we talk about adaptability, these are all factors that we want to make sure that we're ready for. And some of the things that we're going to prepare the code for, again, and some of these things could be escalated. I heard the conversations earlier about electric vehicles, and that's going to be something that I think we're going to see expanding as time goes on. And again, it won't happen overnight just because of the sheer infrastructure that's associated with it. looking at ways that we can ensure that we have secure bike parking. That was something that we heard from a lot of employees and business owners, is the fact that they do ride their bikes, and you can see where they've got them trying to shove them in the back room or in the lunchroom of their businesses to ensure that they're kept safely. So opportunities like that, especially with the transit stops that we have too. I mean, those are the kind of things that I like to call our gems in a community like yours. The fact that you guys have light rail stops right core next to your downtown, those are opportunities that not every community has. And then anything that we can absolutely do to promote alternative modes of transportation to ease the impact on parking is absolutely a part of the conversation. And just as I mentioned before, the timing, all of these things are definitely adaptable. Priorities may shift, demand may change. Again, who knows, after this last year and a half we've all had, who knows what's next in store for any of us. But that's why it's so important that we have to build a system that can accommodate change and be prepared for whatever those impacts are. So as we go to the next slide, please, Chase, talking about some of the next steps. So again, I mentioned that we're gonna do another survey, and we're kind of on what I like to call the road show, getting everybody up to core and up to speed of where we are right now on the project, because we really wanna make sure that the level of engagement stays at a high, because we want people to know about what we're doing. There's no secret when it comes to talking about parking. We want everyone to know what we're doing, and we want people to tell us if they're worried about something or if they don't like one of our ideas, because that's going to be a critical aspect of being able to make sure that we have a solution that's going to work in the city of Beaverton. So as we basically go through this process and we get the next survey posted, basically you'll look at us really coming at the early part of 2022 to take the plan to be adopted. Now, it's really important when we talk about this being a plan and having it be adopted, it doesn't mean that just because the city says we accept the plan, we're doing all of this. Basically, this is intended to be an implementation guideline to really give, again, those kind of like next steps of what to do next and to follow that kind of process. I think some of you that heard me speak before called it the choose your own adventure path, right? When you get to that crossroad in those books you read when we were a kid and you say, I can take path Y and do this, or I can take path X and do that. That's really the intention of this, is to really kind of tee you up with the resources and tools so that you can make strategic decisions to the benefit of the downtown. If we go to the next slide, please, Chase. So reverting back to where we really started was, again, hearing the feedback from you. I know I covered quite a bit of detail, and I know you all have been meeting for quite some time, but we really wanted to hear if there was anything that you all needed clarification on, if there was any prioritization of anything that we talked about, or again, if there's anything on the experiences from any of these strategies that we've talked about. If we can hear any of that feedback from all of you, I would gladly hear it and open up the floor to that. Oh, and there's one more slide with some of the recap. I think we put a lot of questions on here for you. Was talking about the centralization of parking, basically how far you're willing to walk towards your destination, the concept of park once and wayfinding, and again, general feedback. So sorry, there was a lot of questions on those slides. And with that, I will ask if we can end the screen share, and I will turn the floor open to the chair and take direction from you on what is next.
Thank you. Appreciate the time, Julie. Are there questions of anyone? Commissioner Urbanski?
I had a question about paying for parking. Would it be pay and display, or how would it be? Because I ride a motorcycle and I know people who drive an open top cars. It's always a problem with pay and display, because where do you put the receipt? You know, you put it in a windshield and somebody will take it or it gets blown away. So just wondering, have you thought about things like that?
Definitely. So the industry has definitely changed, and thanks to the pandemic, it's expedited this. Everything is going to a pay by license plate format. So that also from an efficiency side, the city and the parking operator who's going to help support the program can manage by license plate and utilizing license plate recognition technology and factors like that. So no more stickers, no more decals. If you pay at a pay station or if you use the mobile device, everything is based on your license plate.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I think one of them was that, so first off, the 1,100 people came from these are the residents and business owners within the parking structure.
So it's actually, oh, sorry, go ahead, Molly.
Oh, I was gonna let Chase, he was the master of distributing the call out for responses. So I was gonna let him sort of share who was involved in that.
Yes, hi. We reached out to businesses in the area, but when it came to residents, we actually spread much wider than that. So we took a walk shed around and a parking shed kind of around the downtown area and sent it to apartment managers, had people share with all of their contacts, and it went further than that too. As you might have seen from the slide before when I was talking about how often people come to downtown, those were also some people who were even Washington County or further afield who maybe work downtown or come through the area for the farmers market, who answered that as well. So it went very far and wide, but the majority of the folks were within the downtown area and the areas surrounding that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it gives a good idea. It's 1,100 out of 100,000. So, okay. Also, one of the other questions that I saw was everybody's interested in having more parking, but we just had a survey presentation that said that everybody is absolutely for closing the streets to maintain this parking open street, first street.
Open air Beaverton.
Yeah, and so I'm hearing, we just had a conversation about that. They actually want to close the streets and parking was not an issue. Nobody's really concerned about it. And just curious how that's going to fit in. I think it would be interesting to tie that survey in as well, because this commission actually had a request for an extension to keep streets closed. So there isn't a parking issue from what we're hearing, but then also, as we just saw in the last public hearing, it seems to be there's a little concern that there is a parking situation. So it is definitely focused around, and I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that included in the process as well. Also, I think there's more information on the downtown, this parking garage structure situation. I know that we have already had, this commission has seen a presentation that the police department and the city did not, or the court system and the police did not have an integrated system. So people would get 6, 7, 8 tickets, and the court system would not know it. They were never cited, or they were cited, but they never got in trouble, basically. So it'd be interesting to hear how that's going to be all tied together as well. Because again, we heard there people were police were writing tickets, but nothing was getting done. The courts did not even know they were out there. That's how disconjunct they are. And I know with the new technology there'll be changes, but it'd be interesting to hear how that's going to be tied together and how they're going to make sure that it goes on.
I can tackle. So the first street aspect too, in terms of tying that all together, absolutely. Tackling those, tying that information together has definitely been a part of the conversation. Regarding the technology, and especially on the citation, we've actually been working with the police department and the court, so that when we basically selected the vendor that's going to be starting at the beginning of the year, that'll actually be a whole new process and a whole new system, and that automation that you're describing is a part of that. And so that's going to be an important aspect of things are going to be different. I want to highlight that. But again, there's a big education curve that's going to become a part of that, so that folks are prepared for that. So folks, like I mentioned earlier, folks have been getting away with anything, they should count their lucky stars, because that will change at the start of the year for sure.
Okay, and then the last two things that are just comments only. The first one was, Beaverton had this vision committee thing going on, and they had a big survey, and fantastic, and everybody's a lot of rally around the flagpole. I say that because two things that came out that I heard from your topic was, the first one was your plan for farmers market improved parking is in the second phase at 3 to 5 years. And pre-pandemic, the number one concern we had from library patrons was that they couldn't get in because even though there's signage there, the farmers market people would say, oh, I'm going to go to the library after the farmers market, and they couldn't park. So I'd like to see that not be a 3 to 5 year plan. I think that needs to be addressed right away. We've already had that to me is just a complete and utter mismanagement of process flow that should have been addressed long ago, and everybody knew it. And we know that there's abuse of the library parking lots, and then we're encouraging them to go use a library parking lot. So that was the first one. The second one was the vision committee survey. The number one thing was walkability and safety, and yet the 6-year plan, the farthest thing out is bike parking, which we're trying to encourage families, friends, and deal. We have a Beaverton Bicycle Advisory Committee that reports to the mayor. The vision committee, number one feedback for that was walkability, safety, and being able to bring families and friends down. And to have that be the last thing on the list, it's just kind of not really making sense. The focus is on a big, beautiful parking garage that encourages people to figure out how they're going to park there and use it as the park and ride for Max, because we already know that there's going to be people trying to figure out how to get that system going. So those are my only comments on that. Anybody else?
Commissioner Bobadilla has her hand up.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I do not see one on my screen. Sorry about that. My apologies.
I would like to see that whatever a method for payment that is used is consistent. For example, like the Oregon Zoo has one method for paying if you go up to the machines, and then if you want to be able to use your app, it's a little bit different. And basically then you get charged to have surcharges. I can just tell you, even from a customer perspective, people get really annoyed about that, make it consistent one way or another instead of like that. And that actually encourages people, and just, it's a teaching moment, right? You're going to get used to whatever it is there versus having these options. So I would really like consistency to see that. I would also hope that I think you kind of chimed on it, different pricing level for events, especially once the art center opens up, for being able to have events there. If we have the parking fees are extraordinary, it's not going to encourage people to want to be able to use it. And then we're going to have a problem of that becoming failure, because there really is no other parking. We're banking on this beautiful structure to be where people are going to want to go park. If you're going to charge them for $20, I'm just exaggerating. It's not the demand here, right, in Beaverton. So I think that's going to be key, and especially more, like you said, affordability. Also, so everybody can have access to a beautiful center that is coming down the road. Also, please also consider good lighting in those garages. That's something else that people don't like garages for that, especially in the evenings, right? Especially women, favorable parents with children in the evenings. So lighting is going to be very important. You are the traffic guru, so I assume you've been out there and seen some great garages, but I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see some of the new garages that the short-term parking in the airport. It's really nice. The lighting, they did a very good job compared from how it was years ago. Just giving you a hint there. And also, it's really nice how you can walk up and it gives you a lighting, whether there's parking available or not, instead of people going in circles. It's automated, it's green or red. I mean, those things keep pushing traffic flowing smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice. Vice Chair McClean?
Yes, just on the general feedback, I'm not expecting an answer. I just want to share some thoughts I had. Really, I think, for the strategy for downtown parking, like the new parking lot, or the parking, multi-story parking building you're talking about, I think two things are really focused on, especially like long-term strategy, is climate impact. How is this going to affect? I mean, are there trees on the roof of that? How does adding more impermeable surfaces help, stormwater runoff and other climate related, challenges? We're already years past where we need to be. So again, those are strategies I hope that are involved. And then also, I think you mentioned on this is inequality. Like we're noticing on that chart, 90% of the people driving downtown are using cars. So Beaverton is still very much a car city. So, you know, people that are using that, they may be willing to pay or have the ability to pay where others may not. So if we're prioritizing cars or parking, are we underutilizing the public transit, microtransit, you know, shared ride, other types of modes of transport? You know, I would hope that any parking plan would encourage alternates that really focus on those two categories, income inequality and climate crisis. I think really that's also, I think Beaverton is going to be open to those things. You know, we're going to say, oh, if I can take this trolley or whatever to downtown, or if I can take this other service to downtown, or if I can, you know, earn something by parking or doing this type of, you know, strategy, I think that will also help elicit certain behaviors and changes. Because people, like you said, people want to come downtown. There's so many exciting things about downtown. I would just hope we can utilize that excitement of downtown to improve those two categories. So that's my only feedback.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Excellent. Mr. Khasho?
I have general question about the time when the plan is going to come out. And I've seen on one of your slides that it's going to go to council in January. Is there potential to have another presentation for the traffic commission before you take it to council, so at least they have a chance to take a look at because any changes so far within the downtown is going to come to the traffic commission to review and approve and hold the hearings on, you know, unless the code gets changed for the downtown alone. So I think it could be a good idea just to bring it back to the traffic commission. This is what we think. This is what the survey showed. This is what the study showed. And we're going to implement these strategies, you know, whichever way. I don't know how you're going to do it. But I think it will add value as we move forward and start doing these changes.
So thank you for that, Jabra. And I think that we can definitely figure that out. I think right now the plan is to bring the draft plan to council in January. And Julie can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's our current timeline. But we're about to engage. This is the beginning of our second round of engagement. We're doing the roadshow of what we heard in that first round, some of these draft recommendations, getting the feedback from folks like the commission to take us through that next round of engagement and then create the draft plan. So we would be happy to arrange a time with you, Jabra, to come up with the right timing to come back to the commission and talk about sort of that full draft plan, and even what we've heard from Bureau and council, if we get that opportunity before or after, and we can kind of discuss what would be the most appropriate timing before it goes in for adoption.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sergeant Shaw?
I just had a question about the enforcement side of things. Anytime you use a third-party vendor to do enforcement stuff, is there a plan for like oversight for that to make sure that doesn't become predatory or in their favor of some way? I feel like maybe everybody's feel like they're victimized at some point in time by a parking enforcer. So
well, the one thing that's important to tie into this is that there's no motivation by the number of citations they issue. I want to highlight that. So that's really an important factor, so that there's, again, no financial incentive. They're paid a flat fee regardless. And I will say that this is a model of a program that has been leveraged across the country right now. So this is pretty commonplace because the need for consistent compliance is such a significant part of downtowns like yours. And so I can say that that whole kind of territorial aspect of it, it really has become a non-issue these days because of the fact that the communication, the customer service access, because honestly, when you look at it Well, we want people to follow the rules. That's the key. Is it's about compliance. It's not about revenue generation. And I think that that's an important aspect when we talk about sustainability too, is that that's going to be something that when you talk about a position like Molly's, is that that's really when we talk about that role. And it's also another reason why we've been working so closely with the police and with the court also in the implementation of this program too, because they are representatives of the city when they're out there in that role. So I think that that's going to be a big part too, and why you hear me mentioning the messaging and the outreach of being such a big part of that.
And I'll just add to that, Deputy Chief Williams has been involved in this process from essentially day one. And Lieutenant Carino, when he was working with the CSOs, was also involved in the scoping of all of this. And we have a memorandum of agreement with the BPD as to what sort of, where those responsibilities overlap, supplement, and the scope of work of what the parking ambassadors would be doing. So we're continuing to work closely. I know that we have lots more conversations to be had, for sure, but we appreciate the partnership that BPD has put forward thus far.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Molly, was that it?
Yeah.
Okay, Sergeant Mastripolito.
Yeah, so I supervise the CSOs and the parking enforcement team. And I'm also on the BPA, so I'm just offering my services to you folks as you move forward. So we've responded to 3,700 parking complaints this year. We're issuing tickets. I spoke with the court and I haven't heard that they're working on anything currently, but I just wanted to offer my services. Nothing's coming down. I know you said you talked to the DC and Lieutenant Carino, but I'd love to have some conversation with you about how you guys plan on doing things and how we're doing things and how we can work collaboratively together going forward, both from the BPA side and the parking side.
Very much appreciated. And you're actually on my list of people that, after a discussion with our city attorney's office yesterday around some of these things, you are on my list of people to contact. So it's nice to see you this evening.
Oh, you spoke to Greg Brown?
I've worked with Greg, and I've also been working with Grace on some of the
With
contracts
Grace? Okay.
scoping. So yeah.
We'll get together next week.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, perfect.
Excellent, thank you. Some good questions and comments both. Anybody else? All right, that being said, we're done with that part. Thank you. Next up,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any old business, Mr. Khasho?
Yeah, just a couple of items. The speed limit on 173rd Avenue between Cornell and Walker, it's reduced now to 35, so the signs are up. Also on Denny Road between 217 and Hall Boulevard, the speed reduction got implemented. It went down from 35 to 30, so now it's posted 30 miles per hour. The signs are up too.
Excellent, thank you.
Jabra,
Commissioner Bobadilla?
sorry, Chairman.
No, that's fine.
Is there any sort of like announcement about that being made to the public, to the community, like in the newsletter or anything, especially Hall? I'm just saying, it's not that I want people to get tickets, and I know it's the right thing to do, but you know, some people that are very used to it. Is there any warnings that are going to be going out?
So far, no, there hasn't been any, published in the newsletters, because the timing for the publishing doesn't really line up. Sometimes you need like a month to 2 months in advance, to publish the article in the newsletter. But what we've been doing, we're having signs outside, like traffic control change signs. We put flags on the speed limit signs so drivers are aware of the change. But also the police are not enforcing them at this time. They're giving some time for the drivers to adjust and get used to it. They see the signs. I mean, on Hall Boulevard, the sign's been up over 2 months now.
I can share on 173rd, I noticed the 2 little orange triangle signs or flags. So I was like, oh, that's how I noticed it changed. So I think for people, at least that commute there on that street often, they'll notice that, because that was different and caught my attention the first time I went on that street.
What's good is, again, I just want to know what was being done to make sure that people are aware of it, that there's been a change.
Yeah, it's time basically, and after a while you see it every day. I'm sure people who are regular commuter, they'll notice this and they'll adjust accordingly.
I agree, but initially people are just like you said. I mean, they're commuters. They're just in zone mode of they're used to their community and what it is, and you're just going. I can tell you, I've done that. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
but we're still gonna try to publish something, even if it's little late, but potentially it could provide some information or guidance for people who are not aware of it too.
I agree. I appreciate that. Even late is better than ever, and it's even like as you're aware, it's already been done. It's been happening, but it's people read it, and I think it's important. That's what we use that resource, and we push it to the community. Read it, see it, make sure you're aware of it. So thanks, Jabra. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The orange flags, Jabra, are they going to stay for a while? They really, really work. I
Yeah,
noticed the signs right away with those flags on them.
we could keep them as long as we would like to. I mean, there is no time limit, to take them off. But after a while, you keep it for several months, then people become numb to it because they see it every time. So we also like to keep that effectiveness when we use those flags.
Correct.
Yeah, but if they're working and people are paying attention, that's good news, and we'll keep them until we feel that it's time to take them down.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Is there any new business?
I don't have any, but we will not be having a November meeting. We don't have any items ready to bring to the commission, so probably we'll have a meeting in December.
All righty, very good. All righty, final Sergeant Shell.
I just have a real quick question for Mr. Khasho. So there's the parking on West Slope and 81st across from West Sylvan Middle School there. It seems to be a problem every year. Is there a way we can revisit the no parking there on 81st and how the pedestrians are walking down the roadways and using that? I don't know the historical content behind why those were put in. I can see why the West Slope no parking signs are there, but the 81st Avenue ones.
Yeah, we have parking restriction during school dismissal time.
Yeah. It's I think the spirit of that is to keep the kids from walking in the middle of the street. But in practicality, the parents and kids are walking in the middle of the street, whether the cars are parked there or not. And it's not working. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Yeah, it was implemented so kids who walk to their homes from the school be able to at least to walk on the side.
Yeah.
Because most of the time parents are parked within that area. Yeah, you can define where the roadway is and where the shoulder is, and people just park there. So yeah, I mean, I haven't heard from any of the residents in that area, that they have concerns about this and their kids not being able to walk. But we might need to enforce it too. I mean, that's
what we're out there doing today.
Yeah.
But it seems silly because the enforcement, we moved people, but people still did it the exact things that we didn't want them to do. The pedestrians still walk down the middle of the roadway.
Yeah, actually, recently there is a parking problem at every school in Beaverton.
Yes.
It's just the parents are driving all over the place. Yeah. So I think we probably need to wait a little bit to let it settle down, see where we're going.
Okay.
At this time, you might do something this week. Next week it will change. So I think we need to tackle what we have. Just keep, enforcing what we got, trying to work it out, and we'll see where we get from here. But if you feel we need to change that location, we will change it. This was, brought to the commission years ago, at the request of the residents in that area.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Jabra.
Thank you. Appreciate you checking on that too. Yeah, I remember that. That was a interesting case because we did have that discussion about where do they go, cars queuing up, and just the school districts as a whole need to contribute to that as well. So
It's a mess.
yeah, and it is at all of them, and it
Mhm.
needs to go. We've seen several cases where they come up that there's been something about parking or no parking, and it wasn't anything to do with the street parking. It was to put a car or prevent a car from being in one spot so that the traffic flow would have to change or could be changed for the schools. So very interesting, complex. All right, thank you, everyone. Anything else, final comments? All right, seeing none then, we are adjourned and we will see you in December or January. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Ready?
Thank you, and have a good evening.
Happy Thanksgiving.
too.
We won't see each other till
Yeah, happy
December.
Thanksgiving.
That's right, happy Thanksgiving. All right,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, so much. Appreciate all your work. Thanks for coordinating that.
I try hard.
Thank you.
You're
Bye.
an awesome
Thank you.
job. Thanks. See you, Sherry.
Thank you. Bye.
Bradford.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.